You're welcome to Business Highlights on Trust TV. On the show, we analyze economic, financial, and business developments for the week and how they impact the average Nigerian. My name is Chamun Dabeng, and I'll be your host. We're kicking off things with the stock market report. Now, the Nigerian Exchange Limited NGX All-Share Index ASI and market capitalization decreased by 0.91% or 242 billion naira during the trading week that ended on Friday, September 23rd to 49,026.62 points and 26.444 trillion naira respectively, compared to the previous weekend when both indicators were at 49,475.42 points and 26.686 trillion naira. Oil and gas, industrial, insurance, and consumer goods stocks declines contributed to the record drop in the review week, while investors looked for banking firms that were selling below their target values. While the majority of banking stocks were insulated from the week's bearish run and the sector concluded the week in the black, others had difficulty recouping their prior losses. As investors continued to exercise caution ahead of the next Monetary Policy Committee meeting, the sell side of the market grew. All significant sectoral indices except NGX Banking Index finished the review trading week in the negative. The NGX 30 Index, which tracks the progress of the 30 largest publicly traded companies on the exchange, fell by 0.99%, while the NGX Consumer Goods Index fell by 0.16%. Others are the NGX Insurance Index up by 2.27%, NGX Banking Index 2.27%, NGX Oil and Gas Index that is down by 4.68%, and NGX Industrial Index down by 3.92%. The stock market's favorable year-to-date return decreased to positive 14.77% as trading week came to a conclusion. The market has declined by 1.63% year-to-date. Now, for the top three gainers, we have Vitafoam, RT Briscoe, and Access Core, and they were up by 6.9%, 6.06%, and 6.02%. And the top three losers were CWG, Bega, and Interna, down by 10%, 9.85%, and 9.45%. All right, we'll go on a short break, and when we get back, we're moving on to our discussion for the day. Don't go anywhere. You're welcome back to Business Highlights on Trust TV. My name is Chamun Dabeng. All right, the latest figures released by the Debt Management Office shows that domestic debt has pushed Nigeria's total public debt stock from 41.6 trillion naira to 42.84 trillion naira, showing a 1.24 trillion naira hike in 3 months. Now, that's between March and June of 2022. Now, considering that the country is currently struggling with revenue generation, should we be worried about a 1.24 trillion naira hike in just 3 months? What does this new figure mean for a developing nation like Nigeria? Now, we have seen the government defend its borrowing, stating that it is under control and below the self-imposed 40% threshold. But is it really under control? And more importantly, what's the way out of the cycle? I am joined in the studio by business consultant and public affairs analyst Agaba Wilson. Agaba, now to take a deep look at Nigeria's debt stock as well as analyze Nigeria's debt to GDP ratio. Now, you're welcome to the show. Now, what do you think about all of this that is going on, especially when it comes to our, our debt profile right now?
Well, like I always say, the debt itself shouldn't be a problem if we are able to utilize it properly in a way that it helps us to generate more revenue to pay off the debt.
Debt stock.
Right, so
analyzing Nigeria's debt.
Okay. So, like I said, the debt itself is not a problem. Okay. So, but what are we using it for? If we are borrowing to pay recurrent expenditure overhead, or what you call salaries, then that is so not good for us. But if we are borrowing and investing in infrastructures that will enable economic activities that can help us improve on revenue generation, then we'll say that, okay, we'll begin to see the impact of this debt in the long run. Now, if you look at some of the most developed countries in the world, you will see that our debt is nothing compared to theirs. America is running around 32 to something $trillion. And if you go to UK, they are in the trillions too. Japan, Canada, and all of those big countries, you know, their debt profile is far higher than ours. But what's the difference between them and us? Those debts are properly utilized.
Yeah.
Okay, they are put into things that help their economy to expand. So what we must start asking is, what are we putting these monies on? Are we using it to pay salary? Are we using it to fund trips of big politicians and high government officers? Or are we using it to build roads? Are we using it to build our electricity? Are we doing rails, ports, and all of these things that can help us create more jobs? Are these the things we're using the money for? If these are not the things we're using the money for, then we have every right to worry. Now, there's also the concern that our revenue is no more enough to take care of what we are spending. All right, that's a concern. If this money we are borrowing are being put into proper use, we can say, okay, yes, we can take this tentative setback. In the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we'll come back better and we'll be able to generate more. So these two things are things we must dive deep into before we make a conclusion whether our debt is actually bad or it's good.
All right, so before we continue on with our discussion, we have a clip of President Muhammadu Buhari speaking at the 77th UN General Assembly that took place in New York City. Now, he's talking about the debt profiles of so many poor nations out there and how they need relief. Please go ahead and take a look.
In spite of our efforts, humanitarian crisis will continue to ravage some of our communities. Nigeria, therefore, implores our global partners to do more to complement our endeavors. Indeed, the multifaceted challenges facing most developing countries have placed a debilitating chokehold on their fiscal space. This equally calls for the need to address the burden of unsustainable external debt by a global commitment to the expansion and extension of the debt service suspension initiative to countries facing fiscal and liquidity challenges, as well as outright cancellation for countries facing the most severe challenges.
All right, so obviously the issue of high debt profiles is not just peculiar to only Nigerians, since he's speaking to other nations who are poor but have a high debt profile. He also speaks on the debt relief initiative. Now, what do you think about the address by President Muhammadu Buhari?
Well, I think he spoke well for his constituency. Of course, we are not a country poor in resources. We are only poor in management and poor in discipline. And of course, I might want to add character to that list, but I don't want to do anything that would be ruled out. Now, but basically, we are not poor in resources. We're only poor in administration. We are poor in all the things that help you harness the resources. So that makes us a poor country like others. Yeah, for some other countries, they may have a tenable excuse for their creditors to want to cancel their debt. But if you look at Nigeria, and if I am your creditor, would I want to forgive Nigeria her debt? Let's take a look at what Nigeria does with the monies and its own resources. We have issue of oil theft in the oil producing communities. And our production, our quota, the OPEC quota, we are not even meeting it. For a long time, what have we done? Enough to curb this situation. This is something that is within our control. We can help that. We know if we get down to the root, we'll be able to trace those who are responsible for the theft of this crude oil. But what are we doing purposively and transparently to let the world see that we are trying to figure out how to solve our own problem? Let's come to the issue of payroll theft, where we continue to discover thousands and thousands of ghost workers all the time, including the recent one discovered on the IPPIS. What are we doing in the public domain transparently to tell people that we are trying to catch those who stole the money to bring it back? Because if they are on IPPIS, there are accounts. If money were paid to those accounts, if you arrest those people that own those accounts, they would be able to tell you where they take the money to after it is paid to them. And if you go to a bank that has accounts but cannot trace the human beings that own the account, then you catch the bank. And they will tell you how they open those accounts. Are we doing those things? Mm-hmm. So if you look at all of this, you look at the issue of corruption. You see this person stole 180 this billion. This one stole this trillion. This one stole. What are we doing in the public domain to recover these monies? So if somebody says that this man, you are rich, you are just misusing your resources, he will never tell you, oh, I forgive you your debt. He's always going to tell you, pay me back. It is high time we start up and begin to do what we need to do the right thing. There are several organizations that are doing businesses in this country because they know somebody somewhere. They are either paying less than they are supposed to pay to the government or cover in terms of taxes, or they are not paying at all, or they pay to one individual. And the authorities set up to always ensure that these things don't happen will not do much. Almost at all the time, they get what is for their own personal aggrandizement, and they leave these companies to do whatever they do. There are a lot of resources that we can harness. What are we doing to harness them? We always throw money at issues without researching the issue to know the root cause of our problem and then proper lasting solution to these issues. So at the end of the day, it may be difficult for somebody to sit down and say, I want to forgive Nigeria their debt. Yeah. They may forgive other smaller countries that have genuine excuses to be where they are. But I don't think Nigeria has any excuse to be where we are today.
All right, so I would like to bring the discussion over to our 2023 budget. As you know, it's not that far off. Now, the budget is proposed at 19.76 trillion naira, and about 11 trillion naira of that is a deficit. And subsidy is already set to go up about 6 trillion naira of that. Now, what does this mean for the country? Are we just running around in circles? And is there a need to reconsider the 2023 budget to ensure that the country is spending within its means?
You see, the problem with budget and then running the country in total is this. You can't cut down the budget because there are things to be done. The only thing you can do is to prioritize, okay? Now, because government is a continuum in reality, some of the mistakes of the 80s, the 70s, the 90s are still with us today, haunting us. Some of the commitments we have made long time ago are still with us today. Those we must keep to, all right? But within home, how can we run a more efficient government? Look at the budget for the convoy of the governors, for those of the ministers, for those of the National Assembly and all of that. Can we at least look at this thing and cut them down? That's somewhere to go. Can we look at the duplication in the civil service and see how we can cut that down? People will say you are advocating for a loss of job. No, job creation is not by getting thousands of people to go to work. Job creation is by seeking a solution to existing problem that makes life better for people, and by so doing, getting people engaged. So you kill two birds with one stone. You get people employed, you solve a problem. And in fact, a third one is that the quality of life of the people improves. So we should look at solving problems. We don't create ministries because you want to give your friend a position or you want to give certain supporters something to chew on. Oh, let's create this ministry. And if you look at our ministries and parastatals, there are a lot of them that overlap into one another. So let's merge them. Let's not have director this, director that, all of them using how many cars, how many this. And let's bring them, let's streamline the cost of governance. Then let's try to look in the direction of revenue generation. How can we improve our revenue? We continue to bring down the heavy hammer on the few people who are already paying taxes. How about widening the net? How about widening the net? And you see, people are not just going to walk up to you and pay their taxes. There has to be incentives for paying taxes. So what are the creative incentives you're bringing up? How much do people know about it? What agencies are supposed to carry on with this sensitization and orientation? How much are they doing? So I'm a business consultant, and I don't think I am that person who is very lazy about getting information. But I don't know much about any such government programs for SMEs. If I don't know much, how much the SME owners? So the government has to do much in terms of generating revenue. We must plug leakages, we must cut down unnecessary expenses, and we must focus on the things that matters. The infrastructures that can help us create more economic activities to generate more revenue for the economy. Those are the things we must focus on. The budget itself, can we still trim it? I don't think we can do that. But can we make sure that the resources that we are going to borrow will be properly applied in a way that it will give us long-term advantage, long-term increase in economic activities, and hence long-term revenue generation. I think if that is done and it is properly implemented, we would be a little bit okay.
All right. We'll take a short break, and when we get back, we're going to be talking about Nigeria's dollar shortage. Don't go anywhere. You're welcome back to Business Highlights, and once again, my name is Chamo Dabeng, and I'm here with Agaba Wilson Agaba, and he is a business consultant and also a public affairs analyst. Now, we're taking a look at Nigeria's dollar shortage, and I'm very sure you would agree with me that this has actually affected every single sector across board. We've seen it in the aviation sector. We've seen it basically everywhere. It's basically shaken up the country in a sort of way. And in a bid to actually save the Naira, now banks are taking some drastic measures. Now, banks have announced the temporary suspension of overseas automated teller machines, Naira card transactions to preserve foreign exchange reserves. Yes, let's take a look at some of the facts. Now, Naira exchanges at 413 Naira to $1, the investors and exporters I&E Forex window, while black market was at 710 for the dollar, creating 280 Naira per dollar premium between both rates. First Bank of Nigeria Limited said it will suspend international transactions on its Naira MasterCard from September 30th. Fintech firms like Flutterwave, Eversend, and others had also stopped virtual card services for international transactions. Zenith Bank PLC also informed customers that they have temporarily suspended the use of Zenith Bank cards for ATM withdrawals and POS transactions. Stanbic IBTC Bank, Standard Chartered Bank Nigeria, and Guarantee Trust Bank had few years back announced the suspension of their overseas ATM card services. Some banks have slashed their daily ATM withdrawal limit abroad from the $300 advised by the CBN Bankers Committee to $100. And CBN directed bank customers who spend above the $50,000 annual Forex limit imposed would be implemented and defaulters sanctioned. Now, looking at all of these facts, looking at the decisions that banks, the Central Bank of Nigeria, have actually taken in order to save the Naira, in order to find a way to deal with the dollar shortages, what do you think about it? How does this actually affect the Nigerian businesses, the average Nigerian out there?
Well, what you're going to see is you're going to see a stifled market where the few goods that they have been able to bring in are going to jump, they're going to skyrocket. And another thing you would readily see is the black market rate. Don't be surprised if it crosses 1,000 in the next few days, because this is an issue of supply and demand. Once the demand is low, or the demand is lower than the supply, what happens? The price goes up. And once supply is higher than demand, price goes down. This is a simple law of economics. So in the black market, is going to jump. Now, many businesses are running on components that come from other countries. They need Forex to buy them. Not all of these things are on the government list or assessing Forex. And then going through the official, because I've asked myself before, why do people go to the black market? And I spoke with a few people, and they said, when you go through the official path, it takes a lot of time before you get what you need to get. And sometimes your client there does not have all the time to wait for you, you know. So that is going to happen. You're going to see a jump in the black market rate because people are now going to run to the black market. On the other hand, too, when you limit this spending, it's going to affect companies who are running their operation using certain ICT services that are provided by foreign companies. You need to pay, and you can only pay in dollars, except if we have a way of wooing them to come to Nigeria, set up office where they can collect their own fees in Naira. And then if you do that, then we are going to be battling with the profit repatriation issue. You heard the airlines having some issue repatriating some of their profits recently, and they almost said they were going to withdraw from the country and all of that. So this is going to generate a whole lot of problem. It may solve a few problems, but it's going to cause other ones that we may not be able to dive into because of the time today.
Yeah.
Now, but what I think that we should focus on is production. Because the reason we are spending money out there, and then you are not going to be able to curb it that much, because the world has become a global village. We have e-commerce platform where you can be in Nigeria and buy product from anywhere around the world. Okay? So the information is just in our face. So the best we can do is to actually start producing top quality that can compete globally, so that we are also selling to the world as much as we are buying from the world. At least that way we can have a balanced BOP, a balance of payment. You know, then the Naira can now begin to find its feet. But all this we are doing, they are just quick, short-term modalities, which will solve one problem and create many others. I hope we can really focus on production. And then let's encourage our own companies that are already producing in the country to produce more. Can the government look at buying official vehicles from those who are producing vehicles in the country? Can we look at anything that we import but that is produced at home? Can we look at investing into it so that we produce them at home quickly? These are the only ways we can begin to truly bring down the issue of high demand for foreign currency. And of course, a lot of people are disenchanted and they are trying to leave the country. If you go to any visa office, now any embassy, you see droves of Nigerians. And all of them are going to buy foreign currencies to pay for the visa, to pay for the flight, to do all of those things. And let's not talk about the round tripping that is happening in the FX market, where people send some money from their account in Naira to some friends abroad. The friends send them back again in dollar. They go and cash it, then go to the black market, buy, and they do all of that. All of this is putting stress on the Naira.
Yeah.
So we need to look at the regulation. We need to look at implementation and enforcement of this regulation. We need to also look at production aspect. That is the long-term, the real long-term solution to our problem.
All right, I completely agree. There is a need to plug leakages out there, and we also need to boost production within the country. I completely agree that it is the only long-term solution that we have. Well, unfortunately, we have run out of time, and we have to start wrapping up the discussion. Well, I would like to thank my guests in the studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Wilson, for being a part of the show. And to our viewers out there, thank you so much for joining us. Please do well to follow us on our social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Just look up Trust TV News, and you definitely find us there. Well, once again, my name is Chamun Dabeng. Come back again. Let's talk numbers.